Okay, so I'm switching to English now since our last speaker for the day is a remote lecturer. It's my pleasure to present Deb Goodkin, the Executive Director of the FreeBSD Foundation. She's going to tell us a bit more about the FreeBSD project, why you should be using it. So on to you, Deb.
Thank you, Shuriana. I assume I'm on a big screen there, so because I can see you, but I can't see that.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
going to switch the view to the audience anytime now.
Okay. So thank you, and hello everyone. I'm Deb Goodkin, and I'm going to start sharing my screen here. There, so that should come up shortly. I'm coming to you from Boulder, Colorado, in the United States, and it's 10 a.m. here. So thank you for staying through this conference today to hear my talk, which is the last one today, and I appreciate that. I may even cut it a little bit early just to give you a chance to ask questions, but also to to break and start enjoying the entertainment that they're going to provide here. So let's get going. I'm going to talk about FreeBSD. So first, who am I? I joined the FreeBSD Foundation back in August 2005. So that means I've been with them for 16 years now, so a long time. I used to be an engineer. I did firmware development for storage devices for many years and worked in different areas of that, including like technical marketing and technical sales. And then now, besides running the FreeBSD Foundation, I spend some of my free time just learning more about FreeBSD since that's operating systems was not my background. And just so I could actually contribute to the project as well as give talks like this and teach folks about FreeBSD. And my goal today really is to hopefully encourage you to try out FreeBSD and possibly contribute to our project. So I'm not in Bulgaria, obviously, but I wanted to let everyone know that yes, I did visit back in 2014. And these are a couple photos. And I don't know how well you can see things, so I'm hoping you'll be able to see things okay. But my daughter met me out there, and we were able to sneak out of the conference for a little bit and do a little bit of hiking. And so that was really cool. And we got to meet a lot of local folks by doing that. And then we visited this town, and I'm not going to butcher the name, but I'm sure you recognize it. And we were actually there for a few days and just happened to be there on September 22nd, and which was Independence Day, as you know. The Prime Minister was there giving a speech, and as well as thousands of people. So it was really crowded, but it was really cool being part of that experience, and it just gave us the opportunity to learn more about the country and the history. So now I'll tell you about FreeBSD. And when I think of FreeBSD, I think of it as there's like three different components. So one is the actual operating system. It's a computer operating system. You run it on whatever personal computer that you have. There's the project, which is the operating system, but it's also the community of more of thousands of people who contribute to FreeBSD. And then finally, this last one is the FreeBSD Foundation, which is a separate organization. We're a public charity here based in the United States, and our whole purpose is to support the project, and we're here for the public good. So we are a US-based 501c3. It's our tax classification here in the US. We're 100% funded by donations. Like I said, we're based here in Boulder, Colorado, but we actually have staff and board members all over the world. We were founded back in March of 2000, so we're over 21 years old. And like I said, our purpose is to support the FreeBSD project and the community. And that's all I'll talk about the foundation. What I'm here to do is tell you about FreeBSD, and hopefully in the end, you'll have questions on how can I get started. So like I said, FreeBSD is a computer operating system. It's free and it's open source. And it's a complete operating system. And so most folks here are familiar with Linux, and Linux is a kernel. And that's why you have so many distributions, because folks or companies will take the kernel and then it'll wrap around, what's needed to make it a whole operating system. And FreeBSD is that whole operating system. So it's a whole cohesive piece of software, which includes the kernel, userland, documentation, tools, whatever you need to make an operating system. And we have a long history. We descended from Berkeley Unix, and Berkeley Unix descended from the original Unix. And it's used all over the world by universities, corporations, and just people like you. And it's been around for over 28 years now. So it's been around for quite a long time. This is a really high level view of where we came from. And so, like I said, AT&T Unix back in 1969. BSD, Berkeley Unix, was in the late 70s. And then from there, we branched off both NetBSD and FreeBSD right around the same time. Here's another timeline. We actually have a really nice one on our website. And I should be I'm guessing I'll be uploading these slides because I have a lot of URLs and resources that you can go to that I'll be posting here. So, but anyway, you can see Unix in 1969. It moved, well, it didn't move, but Berkeley started doing research and development with it in the early 70s. And then in 1992, a 386 BSD came out, which was the first unencumbered version of an operating system. And it was open source at that point. We were hit with a lawsuit from AT&T because, basically they were saying we're using their code, but actually it had all been rewritten. But as lawsuits go, FreeBSD and folks that were working on it were tied up in that lawsuit for like 1.5 to 2 years. So it was a really long time. But in 1993, FreeBSD, that's when they came up with the name. And on June 19th, so we also call it FreeBSD Day, and we celebrate it, or we try to. And ever since that, we've been innovating and improving on the operating system. There are lots of companies that use FreeBSD, but what I did here was I just try to take logos of companies that you might be familiar with to show you that a lot of large corporations use FreeBSD. And really, most likely you're using FreeBSD and you don't even know that because iOS and Mac OS were both based on BSD originally, which was then converted to FreeBSD. So a lot of their foundation, the foundation of their operating systems are based on FreeBSD. Netflix, if you watch any movies or shows on Netflix, they're all streaming on FreeBSD servers around the world, which is really cool. Data centers, a lot of data centers run on FreeBSD. Trivago and Groupon are 2 examples. And then the Sony PlayStation, both 4 and 5, are based on FreeBSD. You'd never know it because they don't say like FreeBSD inside, because that's not what they're trying to sell. But their products are successful because they use FreeBSD. So there are a lot of reasons to use FreeBSD. Our community, I mean, always when people ask me, like, why should I use FreeBSD? The first thing that comes to mind is the community and how approachable and friendly folks are. And it's helpful because when you use something new like this, then you're bound to have questions. And so to have someone who'll answer it in a friendly way or informative way really helps that experience. We have a lot of documentation, which makes it easy to find your answers to questions. We use modern tools and compilers, and we have a consistent development model too, which comes from back in the Berkeley days. we run on almost any type of architecture, and a big reason to use FreeBSD, especially like if you're a company using FreeBSD, is the BSD license, which is a permissive license, which means you create what you want to create with it and you don't have to give it back. You can, but you don't have to. And so the goal of the project is really to provide the best software out there that could be used for any reason and any purpose and without any strings attached. So contributors are really happy that folks out there are using it. So the FreeBSD project is that community that I talked about. So this is the model, and the model was based on the original model that was created at Berkeley, because they only had like 4 main contributors or leaders to research and develop on that Unix that they had there. And so they had people out in the world who were they were known folks to them. They were accepted as people who could contribute to their source tree. And it was a limited number of people. And we follow that model now. But over the years, we've refined that and improved that model, because it's been a long time. That there's thousands of contributors, and you either contribute directly as a committer, or you contribute by submitting bug reports, and then someone else will commit those changes. I mean, if you haven't fixed, they'll submit those changes for you. There's hundreds of committers, and those are folks who could actually commit to the source tree. And then we have a group of elected leaders, and they're sort of like the governing board, and I'll talk about them shortly. And we do have a strong mentorship culture. And so if you become a committer, someone who could commit source code, then you have a mentor who helps guide you. And we don't have one person who leads the project who has final say. We have there's multiple people. I mean, basically anyone who's a committer can have a say on whether something could be committed or not. But basically your changes go through a review process, and they could be committed and they could be reverted if it's not acceptable. So it's not like we have any lower standards because we don't have one person in charge. So it's definitely more of a democratic process because of it. This is my own visual of an org chart, because we don't really have like an official one. But a lot of times it's easier, I know, for me to visualize how things look. And so the foundation is a totally separate organization, but we have fingers and to helping all. These are referred to as functional teams, and they're what make up the project, and it allows different folks to focus on different areas that they're interested in, but help produce this product in the end. So you have the core team that oversees and they guide the project, and then the list I have below isn't any less important than the teams that I have in red boxes. It's just that it would be really messy if I just put everyone in red boxes. And someday I think I'll be able to create a better image here. But it shows you that we have all these teams that focus on different areas of the project. And and the fact that we could always use more people in these different areas. Core team, so that's a body of 9 elected people, and they're elected from the committers, and we have over 400 committers. And then they also have a secretary who they pick on their own, and they're a non-voting core team member. And they have tons of responsibilities. They are really busy. I mean, most of these people have day jobs. Well, they all have day jobs, but they also step in to be leaders for the project. And they help from anywhere from administrative with approving commit bits and setting up charters and working with the leaders, which we refer to as hats, for the different functional teams that I mentioned. And but they also will help with direction and guiding folks on what they should work on, or the fact that we need help in certain areas. And they also step in with setting rules, boundaries, conflict resolution, and enforcing all of those. as far as like who are all these committers? Now this is a little dated, this is a couple years old, but what I'm trying to show here is just that we have this age distribution that goes from here, we start at 22, but we actually have committers who are younger than this. It hasn't been updated. So we have committers from, the low 20s all the way up to the late 60s. And it's showing that the project is sustainable because we don't have just folks in the later ages who are going to retire soon. We have younger folks who will carry the project forward, and that's really important for any open source product or project. And then we also have folks from all over the world who are contributing to this. In fact, we have people in Bulgaria too who contribute to FreeBSD. Releases are what we come out with our official images that you could download. And we follow this principle called POLA, or Principle of Least Astonishment. And what it really means is that when you upgrade or you get an image, you're not going to be surprised. So we have this philosophy like, don't break things that already work. Don't make a change just to change. And then also when people do incorporate changes, because we're still innovating and creating and improving, but there's more thought going into it. So people don't just go in and start hacking. They will actually come up with an idea, they'll post it and get input on what others think, and get, that input will help them. And then, and then they may go forward and implement it, and maybe even recruit people to help with it. So it's a more thought out process. We have two kinds of releases. We have major release and a point release. So major release, we just came out with 13.0. That was a few months ago, and that's every couple of years. And that's usually a major release with lots of changes and improvements. And then a point release would be building on that and adding usually like security fixes and smaller changes like that. And that's usually every 6 to 9 months. And then we have two types of branches. One's the current or head, and stable. And so, as you might expect, current is just like you make a change, that it goes to current. And then once things have been tested more and proven, then they go into stable. So how do you contribute to FreeBSD? There's many ways: code writing, documentation, maintaining ports, advocacy. And really, you can contribute with or without experience, just depending on what, where you want to contribute. So for example, if you want to program, then you do need to have a programming background or be in school learning programming. For if you have no experience, documentation is an excellent way to start. And it's easy to get started contributing. We have this this link on our website called Newbies. Basically, you go to freebsd.org, and then there is a button that says New to FreeBSD, or at least I think that's what it says. And you click on it, and it'll take you to this page. So some suggestions that I have for getting started is, whether you're a programmer or not, starting with documentation is the best way to get started, because then you learn the project, how it works, the tools, and by working on documentation, you're learning about FreeBSD. And then you can go from there. You could continue with documentation, or you can, if your background's programming, then you could, contribute that way. You can contribute to many of the ports that we have. We support, actually, I'm not even sure where we're at, but I remember last year was 33,000 ports or software packages that you could run on FreeBSD. And so say there's a software package out there that you absolutely love, but it's not supported in FreeBSD. You can add it, and then you could be the maintainer for that. You could submit or go through our problem report log and fix some of the bugs. That would be helpful. And then just to learn more, we have a FreeBSD Friday series, and we also have how-to guides. and you would go to the Foundation's website, and then for FreeBSD Fridays, I actually have resources at the end here too. Some of the exciting things going on in FreeBSD, we did just do a transition from SVN to Git. So I would say we've definitely modernized the source control and made it really, you're using a tool now that more like especially younger folks are learning. That's what they learn in school and just are more familiar with. So that was a major change, but it's pretty solid now. So that's great. And we've been known for our ZFS support. The nice thing about ZFS on FreeBSD, it's in the kernel. We can do that because of the license. But we're working with Linux Open ZFS 2 into this one project called OpenZFS. And so what it means is that like Linux folks, when they make changes and improvements, it has to work on FreeBSD too. So we benefit by getting those changes, and they benefit by getting ours too. So it's been a really great collaborative effort. Cherry, which is some research going on, I'll talk about that shortly. And another focus, because people talk about this all the time, is the desktop experience. You don't buy it, or I mean, you don't just use FreeBSD because it's great desktop experience, but but it's pretty good, especially in different areas, and we're constantly working on improving that. So people like me can actually use. I have a ThinkPad over here with FreeBSD, and I can use it and get more of my like company operational work done on that too. And we're just using more modern tools and removing anything that's GPL too. So I was talking about Cherry earlier. I see just do a really high level explanation of what this is. It stands for Capability Hardware Enhanced Risk Instructions. And it's this research that's been going on at the University of Cambridge in England, and it's all about security focused and really just enabling fine-grained memory protection, highly scalable software compartmentalization. And they now are working they have a partnership with ARM, and so they're collaborating on this experimental processor that incorporates some of this, this instruction set and changes, because they ARM processors are used a lot in mobile devices like your phones, and Apple just moved to ARM processors, and so it's all about security. And so it's awesome. They've been getting a lot of funding from the UK government and doing this work. It's still in the experimental stages right now. But the cool thing for us is that it only runs what's called Cherry BSD, which is based on FreeBSD. And so because they've been doing this research for years, it means that FreeBSD is like years ahead of any other operating system working on this. So it's exciting. I'm pointing this out just because there is exciting work and research being done with FreeBSD and a lot of opportunities and reasons to use FreeBSD. Here's a list of why companies use FreeBSD. A lot of the major reasons, I would say, what I hear when I talk to companies is the license. And so that way they have the choice whether they give back changes or not. But we find most companies actually do give back most of their changes, which is good for us. And just the long history of innovation, that FreeBSD has this great reputation of innovation, performance, stability, that POLA philosophy I talked about. And so they know that. And then also ZFS for data centers. And so I thought I would we wrote up a case study of Netflix last year, I believe. And so this is just like one of the graphics that I took from the write-up that we created. And Netflix creates these, they have this Open Connect network. And so they have these appliances, they're basically servers using commodity parts, so nothing special. And they're these servers that they locate all over the world. And the whole reason why they do that is so when you're watching your movies, then you're streaming from a closer source. But just like over a year ago, they were tracking 90 gigabits per second just from one server or OCA, and the number's higher than that now. And then just total delivery, because Netflix will take over the internet, like 30% of the internet at peak times, and they're delivering over 100 terabits per second globally there. So they're getting these incredible transfer rates, and I talk here about why they chose FreeBSD. And part of it was because of the license, because they could go in and make those changes to the kernel, and that's their IP. They don't give that back, but they give most of their other changes back to the community. So they track their releases with actually with our head branch. So they really stay on top of that, and they've been doing this for years. So it's always exciting to hear where they're at, how well they're doing, and what improvements that they're making. Other features, I won't go into details, but just things that FreeBSD is known for, from like jails, that we came up with that term, that was really like the first containerization type of idea or product. And so that was created or developed many years ago, and people are still using it. And a lot of like sysadmins will use jails. Beehive is our own hypervisor, and it supports many operating systems. So there's a lot of companies out there using Beehive. TCP/IP was developed actually back in Berkeley days, but FreeBSD has that, and it's used as a component or reference point for many different products and operating systems out there. So, like for example, Windows use that, and dtrace is it's a real time and less for work, but it's a tool for checking things out in real time without it affecting performance. Sometimes, if you feel intimidated to just download something like FreeBSD or even Linux, to understand the command line and how it works, it's complicated when you're first learning. It's new, it's different for most people. And so we have folks who have created their own, we refer to them as desktop distributions. They're all based on FreeBSD, but they have their own like graphical user interfaces to make it a little bit easier for setting up your system. And so I listed a few of them here. I don't have any preferences here. I'm actually, the newest one is Hello System, and that was based, his idea is to base it more on like if you're a Mac user, and so it looks more like using a Mac. And so I was thinking of downloading that just to play around with it. But any of these I would suggest, if you're interested, just to get their image and trying it out, and it might be a easy way to get started in learning FreeBSD. And then we also have our own containerization products, and when I say we, it's just people from the community who are creating these things. So, but we, the foundation, did fund the Linux Later project. We just recently updated that so you can run Linux binaries that way. Beehive, like I said, a lot of folks use that. An interesting one we've been following is called Pot, and the founder of that, he gives talks all the time on this. Bastille's another one. He just gave a FreeBSD Friday talk, and so we have that recorded so you can learn about Bastille and IOCage. So I give this talk or a similar talk a lot at Linux conferences, and the reason why I do that, well, first to maybe try to recruit them to work on our project, but really we should be working together. So I mean, they're two basically competing operating systems, but a lot of times folks work on both, or they'll work on one and then they'll work on the other depending on the jobs that they can get. And so it's really important to be able to work together, and it really provides just opportunities. So first, it's just understand, if you're going to work on operating systems, understanding different ones is going to help you, and it's going to help build that foundation for you on doing your job. We can learn from each other. I mean, we both have successes and failures, and so it's important to learn both. We have different coding methodologies and philosophies, and so understanding the reasoning for both will help you decide, what philosophy do you align with, or which one do you think is better. Our code base is much smaller than Linux, and so it's a great reference platform for learning about operating systems. So for example, FreeBSD, which is the whole operating system, is, actually, let's see, I've updated the numbers here. We have 16 million lines of code. Our kernel is 6.5 million. Linux, which is just the kernel, is 22 lines of code, 22 million lines of code. So if you just compare the kernels, Linux is 22 million lines of code, and FreeBSD is 6.5 million lines of code. So it's a lot less code to look at if you're trying to learn that way. So that's why it's a great reference platform. And then finally, I have this quote from someone I saw who just felt like by learning FreeBSD, it just made him a better Linux sysadmin. And so now, if I've convinced you to look into FreeBSD, or actually maybe I need to tell you this first, and then maybe I'll convince you that, so why contribute to FreeBSD? Be part of an inclusive and welcoming community with our strong mentoring culture. Like I just said, it's a great way to learn systems, programming, as well as just learn about operating systems. And because we're a smaller project in general, smaller being the number of people, that there's a greater opportunity to make an impact on, a notable impact. And then also some of the most respected and notable BSD people and FreeBSD founders are still involved in the project. And the cool thing is that they're really approachable. I mean, they love working with new people and talking to them. So it's a great way to learn and talk to these people who we look at as rock stars. And they're really just down to earth and wanting to help. And it's a democratically run project, so it's just easier to get your changes approved. And it's a really helpful community. And I don't know how well you can see this, but I was just showing some examples of, there's a Twitter handle called FreeBSD Help. And when they respond, they just respond with in really respectful and nice ways. Like, there's no such thing as stupid questions. I mean, I think that that's great. It's because we always feel, if we're starting something new, we feel stupid. We're afraid to ask something. And so we really encourage people to, ask your questions, and then also encourage people from the community, just, if you can't say something nice, just don't say anything. Just try to be helpful. So this is my list of steps to follow to get started with FreeBSD. And I put this together just a couple days ago because I have two people who've asked me, they told me that they want to get involved with FreeBSD, and they're wondering how they can get started. And so I do have a resource page next, but what I did is just okay, if I were starting new, because I'm actually started going through some stuff here now, setting up my computer with the latest version of FreeBSD, and it's been a while since I did that. So I'm thinking, I'm a newbie, and what should I do? And so I started with that newbie page on freebsd.org, and then on that page, it actually has a contributing to FreeBSD. So you can go there, and there's a lot of great ideas of how to get started and maybe what you can do. And then the third place is the FreeBSD Handbook, which is really the FreeBSD Bible. And I say that because it's so informative. It's actually interesting to read. So I've actually sat on the couch on a weekend and have read through this because it's really well written. You can find out more about the history from Kirk McCusick at his website. The foundation has a bunch of how-to guides So for example, I say here that you should just install FreeBSD on a virtual machine. So that way you don't have to worry about, overriding your operating system and having it on a virtual machine. It makes it easy to just like try again if you run into any problems or you want to do something differently. So we have a how-to guide there. We do have this introductory FreeBSD series of talks, and you can find them here. They're all recorded. The other thing too is Linux Professional Institute. I know they have Linux in their name, but they provide BSD certification. And what I found when I went to their certifications and looked at the objectives, that it's a great like syllabus or step-by-step learning process of just if you're not sure, like, oh, what should I learn next, it's like follow the list of what you need to know for the certification test. And it doesn't mean that you're doing it to do the test. I think it's just a great thing to follow, to learn. And then if you have questions, then I list, there's a great Facebook group. There's, you can send a question to FreeBSD questions. This is a whole list of different, venues for asking questions or getting information. But one thing I would suggest, and I know I said don't be afraid to ask questions, is people always just suggest to read first and Google first before you ask a question, just because everyone on the project is a volunteer and a lot of the questions have been asked multiple times. And so there's a good chance that that question has already been answered. And so that way it sort of relieves the current contributors from answering the same questions over and over again, and just allows them to focus on, maybe you've done that research and you can't find the information. And so then they'll step in and they'll help you. And so here, this is my resource page. So this is usually what I use for recommending where to go next. All of this is already listed in the prior slide, but there's 2 books that I highly recommend. If you're interested in learning more about the internals of FreeBSD, the operating system, then I highly recommend getting this book, The Design and Implementation of FreeBSD. The other book, which I have here, that I actually read through periodically, but this is basically how to use FreeBSD, or if you're a sysadmin type of person, this will guide you through that. And then finally, we do have a publication that we publish professionally. Well, they're not really professionally written articles. It's professional publication. And then we have folks from the community who write informative articles, and then we publish that every 2 months. So that's the resource page. And then finally, if you have questions, because here, like, I'm assuming that there might be some technical questions, and there's a good chance I can't answer them. So I would say, here's my contact information. And I think all that's spelled right. And so you're free to email me any questions that you have. I'm also on Twitter, and so you could tweet a question, or you could just DM a question to me too. And I'd be happy to then get that information and get that back to you. So that is all I have. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thanks a lot for the talk. Deb, maybe there are questions from the audience now. Any questions? Don't be shy. Okay, so it looks like we have a shy audience, so I have a question for you. The FreeBSD project switched to Git a couple of months ago, and the code is available on GitHub as well. Do you think, or are you able to see any positive effect from the switch from?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I was thinking that yesterday when we were holding our FreeBSD Friday, Warner Losh gave his talk on Git, and he was one of the primary folks who did the transition. And I didn't have a chance to ask him that. So I haven't I think it's a really good question. I also want to find out more information about that, but I don't have any. I don't have any data, unfortunately.
Okay, so we are about to see how that will impact the project.
Yeah, I mean, I can only see it impacting it in a positive way. And whenever and I say that because people have been asking for that for so long. And that was one of the, I think, holdbacks when we would try to get college age students to contribute, was that's what they knew it was good.
Okay, so we have questions from the audience next.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask something that it is of concern to me. I know that FreeBSD project is successful, and from the technical point of view, I would like to see more of it used by all over the world. Um, my question is whether it is important to the community and the organization that the licenses should be free permissive, and whether you encourage also derivatives, distributions of FreeBSD that includes free software under GPL, for instance.
Um, yeah, I mean, so right now we're trying to get away from, we've pretty much gotten away from GPL. It highly benefits companies using FreeBSD because of the permissive license. And so, so so right now offering it that way, I mean, that's just part of the philosophy, like when I was talking about the philosophy of FreeBSD in the project. To have a derivative that has GPL code in it, that, I mean, that would be your own choice, as that's basically your own either proprietary version or distribution. And so I mean, the only benefit I could see would be there's code out there that we don't, we don't currently support with the license. Sometimes things will be dual license, which is what we try to do.
Yeah, thank you
I
very
don't know
much
if
for
that
the
answered.
answer. I was more inclined to know whether you would also support this kind of derivatives, and if people have questions about how to integrate stuff, whether you would support that or say that is against our mission and we would not recommend that.
I would say most folks would say the latter. They would offer to help, but they would highly recommend against using the GPL code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? More questions? More questions second time? Okay, I guess we are done for today with the talk schedule at least. Thanks a lot Deb, for joining us even virtually today, and we hope to see you in face someday again in Sofia. And also I want to
I
thank
hope
the
so.
FreeBSD Foundation for being a sponsor of the event.
Yeah, we were very happy to sponsor this event. I mean, there's a great open source community in Bulgaria and Sofia, and so we were really happy to support this. And I think we were hoping to attend in person, 2 years ago, but we just couldn't make it work with travel schedule. So hopefully next year. Next year, I mean,
Well,
that's right.
yep, let's hope things will get back to normal slowly soon, and we have all a chance to get back to our normal conferences and meetings. I kind of miss that and miss traveling too. Okay, so bye bye. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you everyone for watching.